She died in 1951, but she never really left. Her cells outlived her, traveled across continents, went to space, fought diseases, and saved millions. Yet she never knew. They never asked. Her name was Henrietta Lacks, born Loretta Pleasant in 1920 in Roanoke, Virginia. Henrietta was a mother of 5, a tobacco farmer, and a daughter of the South. She had deep brown eyes and a quiet smile, the kind that held stories you'd never hear unless you asked. Like many Black families of that era, Henrietta's life was shaped by struggle, segregation, poverty, and resilience. Her hands knew the soil, her heart knew love, and her body was unknowingly about to change the course of medicine. It started with pain. A deep, sharp pain in her womb that refused to go away. She felt it growing, a knot. In January 1951, Henrietta walked into Johns Hopkins Hospital, the only major hospital that treated Black patients in Baltimore at the time. The diagnosis? Cervical cancer. Aggressive, inoperable, terminal. Doctors treated her cancer with radium, the standard at the time. But during one of the procedures, without her knowledge or consent, a doctor scraped a small sample of her tumor and sent it to a lab. This wasn't unusual. It was common practice, especially with poor Black patients. But what happened next was anything but common. In a small lab led by Dr. George Gay, scientists had been trying for years to grow human cells that wouldn't die. Every attempt failed. Until Henrietta. Her cells didn't just survive, they multiplied. Again, and again, and again. They doubled every 20 to 24 hours. Her cells became immortal. They were called HeLa, short for Henrietta Lacks. And they would go on to do what no other human cells had ever done: fuel scientific breakthroughs on a global scale. They helped develop the polio vaccine, studied cancer, understood the effects of radiation, tested the impact of zero gravity, explored AIDS, cloning, and IVF. Her cells, without her name, became one of the most important tools in modern medicine. Henrietta died on October 4th, 1951. She was 31. Her children left motherless, her husband grieving. And for decades, they had no idea that her cells were alive, thriving, and profiting, while her own family struggled to afford basic health care. It wasn't until the 1970s that her identity was leaked. That's when the truth started to surface, and with it, the controversy. Doctors had never asked, scientists had never told. Pharmaceutical companies made billions off her cells, and yet, the Lacks family never saw a dime. In the years that followed, journalists, activists, and eventually the world began to ask, who was Henrietta Lacks? Why wasn't her name known? And what does this say about ethics, race, and consent in medicine? In 2010, Rebecca Skloot's best-selling book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks, brought her story to the masses. Then came documentaries, a movie, public apologies, a spotlight, long overdue. In 2021, the World Health Organization honored her legacy, but even now, questions remain. How many other Henriettas have been forgotten? And how do we ensure it never happens again? Henrietta Lacks didn't sign a consent form. She didn't get a thank you. But her legacy is etched into every vaccine, every lab, every life saved. She gave, unknowingly, the greatest gift science ever received. And now, the world knows her name.